I'd be nervous.
When we used to sell strap wire,
I know all the
if we didn't burn it off,
Mhm.
they would say, we'll give you half price for it.
just the
And you say, oh, okay.
You know, last night I
Put
was
it on the scale and they say, okay, well,
doing
that's
this
100 pounds
at
of
home,
copper,
and,
but most of it's something else.
Sparklight
so
was
you get 50
really,
pounds. So you actually get.
I almost didn't think I was gonna get this piece up to look at it.
Oh, boy. Sure.
I mean, it must have taken
It says
20
your name
minutes
on it, can
just
I
to
log in?
load that one.
Oh, yeah, just go to switch user.
Scrap wire.
To switch other user?
Yeah, other user.
You get somewhere and they lit it on fire.
So do I just put
It's coming to rest.
AA or?
Yeah.
Do we not have a,
What?
do we need a,
No, we got it all on there.
It's not working. Do I have to do the school district thing?
No, you're on the page, so you just need to get,
Yeah, but it says,
There you go.
I don't know if I have to do. School district training.
I did
No,
just.
just the,
Oh, yeah.
JA.
no, I wouldn't do that, I would just do your password.
That's what I did.
Something that says different user,
Yeah, that's what I did.
somebody used yours.
Maybe I have to just. It's got a whole different password in here that it's not letting me delete. So I. Now try it.
Yeah.
Ready to go? Okay, let's go. Call this meeting to order. Welcome. Welcome, Rhonda.
Thank you.
Young gentleman back there. All our board members are present, and there's an addendum, supplemental levy fact sheet we should look out for, and we'll begin with our annual review of the CTE or Career and Technical Education Programs. Rhonda.
Well, thank you. I'm always excited to come and speak with you about the amazing things that are happening in career technical education. And so I'd like to start out, and I always start out this way, because we are a very fortunate district that we can hire really highly qualified individuals for openings that we have. And so this year, we were able to hire 6 CTE teachers. Hillary Diller is the new business teacher out at Century High School. Jordan Green is in the health occupations area, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about her in a minute. But these are 2 new teachers at Century. Noel Brennan is the new business teacher at Highland, and Mindy Quayle is also at Highland in Family Consumer Science. And then Nikki Farmer and Alicia Ward are both new business teachers at Pocatello High School. And so we have 6 really outstanding teachers in our buildings now, and so that just strengthens our program. And since, this is the year of 2020, and we haven't been able to really get out in those schools much, I decided to bring these programs to you via pictures. So our Ag Natural Resource Program at Pocatello High School, these students are out and about, and currently this not so much, but these were things that they were doing even last spring. And so they took advantage of the wellness complex and learned how to kayak. They're learning to fly fish and cast in the front lawn before the addition started going up. And our range science class was out gathering data that they actually submitted to ISU for work. And, we appreciate that partnership with ISU, their outdoor resources, because we were able to use, for example, the kayaks here. So as far as a program update, our medical assistant pathway is in its 2nd year, but I'm super excited to tell you that 4 students that graduated from the program last year went on, and they are currently enrolled at ISU in the medical assisting program and doing very well. We also updated the welding shop over the summer, and we're able to, increase the booths by 10. And so we put in a whole new panel and got all of that up to code so that we could have that many more booths, so that students aren't waiting, to try to be welding, that they're in the process of doing something. We did end up closing our automotive tech program last spring due to low enrollment. That was over a number of years, and so that we don't have that program any longer. And then the other thing, and of course, this was kind of expected, and this happened across the state, because third trimester was, completely virtual, or emergency learning, as we're going to call it. We didn't really give a lot of kids the TSA, the technical skills assessment, or the workplace readiness test, but that wasn't held against us because the whole state was in that same situation.
So did that hurt the kids?
The students who really wanted to still do industry certificates, we still made that available to them. But the technical skills assessment and workplace readiness is a test for the state. So it's more of a gauge on how our programs are doing rather than an individual industry certificate that a student would hold.
Okay.
But
Can I
speaking,
ask a question?
yes.
Where's your
yes.
welding shop at?
It's at Highland.
That's the only one we have, is it?
That's the only one we have. Mhm.
How many booths do you have there?
We're up to 20.
Okay,
We're up to 20.
Does Jack
So
do
you
that
don't-
by himself?
Jack does that by himself. Students, now, I'm just gonna tell you, not all 20 booths are being used at the same time, because students are in different places in their projects. But what it does is it gives each student a booth. So it'd be like a student having a computer in front of them. They might be composing something, or even sketching something out if they're doing graphic arts, but then they have a computer that they can go to and then create their project. So this gives every student a booth, not that they're all welding at the same time. I guess theoretically, they might be able to at some point, but I think we'd have to have way more than 20 students in the class, which we do not. So, any other questions about welding? So this is the medical assistant pathway. This was kind of our goal last year, and we were able to accomplish it for the beginning of this school year, that we have 3 small patient simulation rooms. And so this is where our students go in and they practice. They have a little, when you walk into the classroom, there's like a waiting area, so that they can actually go through that practice of asking, calling a patient's name, and then taking them back to the patient room, checking all of their vitals, filling out their chart work. And so it's very lifelike. It's as close to a real office as you could get. And so I'm sure that this is helping.
Where are these at?
So this one is at Century High School.
How has that program changed since, and I'm blanking on his name, the person who retired last year?
So Rick Benedetti used to
Right.
teach sports medicine, and this is not sports medicine at all. This is a whole different pathway. But I do want to talk to you about rehab therapy when we get closer to the end.
Okay.
So this next screen just shows you that even with third trimester being, not traditional in any sense last year, we were still able to increase our number of industry certificates by 45%, which is an incredible increase considering that not that many students tested for industry certificates because it is optional to them, third try. So the majority of these numbers came from first and second trimester last year, which is just remarkable in my mind. Workplace readiness is really the goal of CTE, that we help students gain job skills. And if they can earn an industry certificate along the way, that's an added bonus to them. But really, that is the goal of CTE, is to help students be prepared to go out and not only find a job, but to be able to hold on to that job. So with distance learning, or social distancing, and trying to be very cognitively aware. We are still offering classes like nutrition and foods, but we've limited the number of students who can be in the kitchen at one time, and they only are making like individual meals so that they're not sharing food. But it is happening, and these teachers are doing extraordinary things to help students still have these same experiences. I wanted to point out that our CNA program last year had 36 students who graduated that are certified nurse assistants. This year, we're on track to have 50. And so that program is growing, and students are taking the test, and they're doing really well. And 7 of our students last year completed the national certification for EMT, and 2 are currently working in Power County through their EMS program, which I think is just awesome. And so, because the state nursing board recognizes that, for clinicals, that students have to have 80 hours of clinical experience, and they can't get into those facilities right now because they're closed due to COVID, they've allowed some optional, some alternate things that they could do. And one of them is that in our case, we can use the ISU Clinical Simulation Lab and help those students get their hours. And so these are just pictures of our students working in conjunction with ISU in order for the CNAs to get their experience, their hands-on experience. And these are EMT students working in our CNA lab, practicing moving a patient from the bed to a stretcher for transport. And so a lot of great collaboration is coming out of this. Where students are learning and they're understanding, and they're still having those wonderful experiences and getting job skills. So here's our funding. It's almost identical to last year. Very, very little difference. Still 3 sources of funding: the out-of-cost funds, Perkins grant, and then the career technical school money. And
Can you go back up? I'm sorry to interrupt you to that
Graphic design.
graphic design one.
Yes.
I had a question on that one. Now, Pokey used to have graphic design, right?
Yes.
And didn't we take that away?
So our graphic design teacher, she did retire. And we moved that program into all 3 schools now in the business department.
Okay,
So they're all teaching graphics in the business department.
so they still have it, but it's just under a different.
It's just in a different department. Instead of being under the art department, it's under the business department now.
Okay. Does it work pretty much the same?
I don't want to say it's identical because, the art teachers would be up in arms at me about that. But the skills are exactly the same. The approach is very different, but the skills are the same. They still take the same Adobe tests, and they still have those same job skills ready. It's just it's a different approach to the same end.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's okay. This is a little video. Oh, I don't know how to start this video without a mouse. But this is a little video of our phlebotomy class. It's in the medical assistant pathway, and these students who go through that pathway will be able to sit and take the industry certificate test to be phlebotomists. Oh, thank you. So it's right there.
We're in class today. We're doing injections. What ones are we practicing, you guys? And intramuscular. Good job. Are you putting that in the regular waste bin?
No,
No, what are you putting it in?
the biohazard waste bin.
Good job. Say hi to your parents.
Cute kids. And so this is in our medical assistant room, but we took a cabinet that we were recycling and put a new top on it. The maintenance shop put a new top on it for us. And this is our phlebotomy lab. And so we actually purchased these fake arms You can see them laying out on the table there, that they practice injections with, with fluid, and then they also practice, taking out fluids. And so that, because they can't practice on each other. But it's still it's a remarkable experience for them, and they'll be able to this will be our first group that will try to pass that. As far as our goals are, we're always looking for new pathways based on where jobs are projected to be. And so we are exploring the unmanned aerial systems through our programming, classes at Century with Chantel Reddish. ISU Workforce Development they are ready to start taking our students' third trimester for the dental assistant workforce readiness program. And then if a student wanted to go on, they could go on into the dental hygiene program. And the rehab therapy with Jackie, this is what you were asking me about. We are going to submit to the state to reopen that program. Sports medicine morphed into, over the last 2 years, into rehab therapy. And so it's much broader than just sports medicine. It's physical therapy, occupational therapies, speech therapy, all the therapies kind of rolled into one so that students can get a bigger picture of what that looks like. And Jordan Green actually has that certification. And so she was just a perfect hire for us to be able to reopen that program and give students another pathway into the medical field. Something that the community members are constantly asking me about, and we're still exploring this, is that, why don't we have a construction program? And, that's a way bigger question than just why don't we have one. It's because you need a teacher, you need a facility, but there's clearly a need, and I've learned all kinds of things about the construction industry, but that is something that clearly the community still values and considers something we should be exploring. And then, of course, our second goal is still the career technical school facility that, should we...
What's going on with that?
Well, COVID has kind of stopped us at the moment, but in my mind, I think about it every day. It's still something that's very needed. I actually just got a phone call from an administrator in Malad and asked if we were still considering it. I said, well, yes, it's still in the books, but COVID has kind of stopped us for this moment. But they were asking about things like, could their students come up? Would it be a schedule that would be amenable for students to be able to travel? And I said, well, obviously, if we could make that happen, we would love that.
Isn't that happening in other places?
It is. Mm-hmm.
So there's a way to do it.
There is. It's just a matter of just sitting down and making it happen.
Yeah.
That's where that one is.
Yep, correct.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
On your
No,
other
up in
pathways,
Coeur
I
d'Alene
was
they have
thinking of
one.
some
And
of
when it's
the
out in the
courses
country,
I
but there
attended
are
about
3 districts.
different, things, and when we toured, and one pathway that a lot of them talked about that we should be looking into because it's going to be highly sought after is cybersecurity.
Well, and we are doing that. I don't know if you knew that, Jackie, but
No.
we're offering 2 different cybersecurity classes right now at Century.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, we're just seeing how they're going, and they're full. They're doing great. They're remarkably,
Yeah, I'm glad to hear
Full.
that because they really emphasized how huge that field is
Mhm.
going to be.
Well, and especially with the FBI thing here.
Right.
It's close.
Yep.
Yeah, so.
And so it makes a lot of sense that Chantel Reddish is doing both the coding, the computer programming, and the cybersecurity, because she's kind of, explaining how those things kind of go hand in hand. You kind of need to know what you're coding and what you're looking at. But you're right, that is a pathway but we're on that trail. We're just, we're moving down it. It takes about 4 years to really grow and build a strong program. And so this is year 2.
So, back to where Dave and Paul were talking about the technical school physical building and things, what do we need to do to jumpstart that again? What do you think we need to?
We're not hearing anything.
Well,
Well, as we talked about, we have a number of projects going right now, and with our Director of Business and Operations, looking at retirement. And so we're just trying to get a number of those finished up. I had, those preliminary meetings with ISU about some property acquisition. And those, as soon as COVID hit, by the first part of March, it stalled.
Yeah,
And as we had talked even in the last month or two, our focus this year is truly on the hybrid, remote learning, on the technology. And so there are just certain priorities that have moved and changed that maybe just hold us back a little bit. But it's, as I mentioned just 2 months ago, it's not off of the table whatsoever. Just a question of the right timing.
I
Well, it was
guess we need to
interesting
get our
to see.
Pokey project.
Scott Rasmussen.
Oh, that's
retired
done.
Too, so,
No, that's,
the partner at the,
Mhm.
whatever, called Eames Center.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
he's retiring also. Mhm.
Right, so lots of transition, but that may not be bad. I mean, it will be new to try to work with someone else, but he was such an enthusiast.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Very much an advocate for this partnership. Uh-huh.
How big of a building do you need?
We looked at, I contacted Kootenai County and talked to the administrator at Cte, and I believe he said, and please don't hold me to this because I'm just trying to remember what I read and what he told me, but I think it was 55,000 square feet. It's pretty large in order to house that. CTE programs need space. I mean,
Right.
and so that's really the biggest drawback, is if they don't have enough space, then it's super difficult for them to, when the firefighting students do these demonstrations like I showed you, I'll show you these pictures in a second, they have to move everything else out of their room. And so all of their classroom tables are foldable tables so that they can physically fold them up, move them out of the way, and then they bring in the props, whatever they're doing, because they just don't have enough space. And yet their room, when you look at it, it's pretty big, but by the time you put students in there and then an ambulance, and right now our fire engine is in the auto bay so that it's a little bit more amenable to social distancing, but it's a big room, but it's still not big enough. And so, yeah.
Well,
One of-
as I recall, the great things about the ones we visited is, here's their classroom, and then they would go right through the door to their work area.
Right.
And they were separated, and I recall how nice, there's a teaching space, and then you go and do your practical.
Right, almost like a lab area.
One of the other things I recall about K-Tech was that he told us, I mean, it's like this huge, long barn, but he
Mhm.
said it was designed so that if they wanted to add, they could at the, at the other end of the building. But having the room for, the big construction projects and the welding and diesel mechanics and that kind of
Mhm.
stuff was pretty amazing, so.
Well, that's a prime example, because we had the opportunity to possibly hire a diesel mechanic that would like to get into education. However, we don't really have a facility for that. And so it became it's problematic because of facility, not because of an instructor. Usually it's the other way around. You have a great idea, but then you can't find anyone to teach it. In that case, we couldn't find any place to have it housed. So
Didn't ISU have a diesel mechanics program?
they have a
down on-
wonderful diesel mechanics
On
program.
Second Avenue, didn't they used to have
Mhm.
one, a big building?
It's-
Yeah, I was thinking, is there an opportunity
It's
for
still
us
there.
to work with them if that is an offering that we wish to pick up?
So they would, I think always ISU would be open to having us work with them. But what they really, ideally what they like is just like what we're doing with medical assistant, where we have students come in, they kind of get a little taste about what this is like. They get some, they get their hands on some things. And then if they really are interested, then they can move on in because they have a few credits. It's, with our machining program and our students, we're never going to be able to afford to have a machining program because those pieces of equipment are $100,000. And so for that, you know, they're willing to work with our students and take them at a much slower pace so that they can get through the program. But ideally, you know, because I did not talk to the diesel mechanics at ISU, but I talked to the automotive program. And, you know, they'd still really love us to have some kind of an automotive program at the high school level, rather than just sending them right to ISU. But, you know, I mean, I think all things are still on the table.
Right, and the interest, and that's why Rhonda presented in an earlier slide, that the interest that we had in the automotive program, just over, say, the last 9 or 10 years.
Right.
We just watched it decline to the point where, I mean, we were less than 30, basically, in a full-day program that's fully funded and a lot of opportunities, but the interest just wasn't there. That's why I would like to see us, as we look toward diesel mechanics, before we build a big shop, pull in a teacher, you know, and all of that. I think we need to see what the interest is, because
Right.
if it's similar to auto, then the fruits of our labors won't be very productive. So we've got to watch that. I liked Mrs. Gebhardt or Mrs. Craner's question earlier. I mean, technology, the engineering, the STEM kind of focus, from design to production. I think that may be, you know, something that the generation that's coming forward might be more interested in. Now, I could be wrong, but I think we need to pursue those avenues.
Right. But here again, we need some place to put those things. I mean, you have to have some place to be able to build and manufacture, and so we can keep talking about that in a second, but let me finish, because I'm sure my time is getting short here. This is just my prime example of just some great partnership. These are the law enforcement students, and they are working with a Pocatello police officer, coming in on how do you enter a building. And these are skills. This is just like typing, you know, you don't just sit down and you know how to type. You learn to type and you practice typing, and that's what they're doing here. And so I'm grateful that the law enforcement program has great support from this community, from all the agencies, and this is just one of the examples.
Somewhere down there at the bottom, there was a disclaimer that said, these are not real weapons, right?
No, but
Maybe Officer Brian, is that?
but they're, if we had a little bit better projector, you'd see they're blue, they're bright blue. So they don't even look like anything. They look like you should be squirting water, if anything, but. And then this is a 4-part series of, these are the firefighting kids, and this is what I was talking about, that they have to move all their learning tables and chairs out of the way to be able to set this up. But this is to simulate that if you were in a firefighting situation and the room was either potentially going to collapse on you, or that you were fearful of a flashover fire, that you'd have to get down low, you'd have to get down low onto the ground and then break the sheetrock out and then climb through in order to potentially save the firefighter's life or anyone else in the building. And so, you know, these are things that, you know, in this case, Mark Brood puts this together. He builds these simulations, and then even if you notice the yellow, it's actually string, but it's simulating the wiring. So you have to get down below the wiring in order to get through the sheetrock in order to be able to escape that room. So pretty amazing things still happening in your schools. And I just, you know, I'm so grateful that you're supportive of CTE and everything that those teachers and learners are doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions, or?
No, I'm
Nope.
optimistic for the future.
I am optimistic for the future too, Jackie. I think we have some amazing things happening. So thank you so much.
Some great potential out there too.
Yes. All right.
And now the calendar committee update with Lori Craney.
Good afternoon. So you should have in your packet the proposed calendar from the calendar committee for the 2021-2022 school year. A lot of twos in that. there. So just some highlights on this calendar that we've proposed is that school will start on the 25th of August, which is a Wednesday. This, as we talk about this works well. I know secondary, it doesn't matter as much what day of the week they start on, but elementary, it is much easier if it starts midweek so that we can get procedures in place and all. So we did put that back. We'd had that a lot of years prior, but we were able to put that back in this for the 2021-22 school year. Teachers would come back on the 18th, and they would have those 5 days before, one of those being that non-directed professional work day that we had plugged in 2 years ago, and so that's why there's 5 days before school before students actually come. You'll note there that,
Yep.
yes, go ahead.
I'm part of this committee, but
Yes, you.
remember one thing, that the first day, you need to teach the new teachers, or it's a wasted day,
Right.
correct? Can you explain that?
Right, and so one year what we had on the 18th, we had that being one of those we put the non-directed work day at the very beginning, like it would be the 18th. And what happened is you had the new teachers went to their rooms, and everybody went to their own rooms, and they worked together, and or they worked by themselves because it was a non-directed day. And so what we've talked about is having the first day of school be something where it's more of an orientation, starting to work with their mentors and all, so that it becomes a productive day and the new teachers feel like they're a part of the staff. So when we go to look at these days, we left them just all there at the very beginning as blue, because some of that will be, one day might be a work day, another might be a professional development day, but it'll depend on, we'll have new math curriculum, so we'll be able to see when the publisher can come and do some professional development and all. So we'll work that out, but it is important, and I thank you for mentioning that, to make sure that our new staff feels welcomed there and that they are a part of that.
Might have to be reoriented. Hopefully, we're out of COVID by then.
Yeah. Who knows what that will bring, but we're going to be very hopeful too, just
Yes.
like they were for CTE. In October, we have a professional development, and then 1 day of parent-teacher conferences. We usually use that as one evening and then followed by the next morning. That way we can accommodate parent schedules who work. You'll note that November 19th is a record day for Tri-1 with a full week at Thanksgiving. Now, we did meet right before Thanksgiving this year, and that was one of the things that all of the surrounding districts, I went online and looked at them, and all of them had a week off at that Thanksgiving. So this puts us more in line with other school districts, not only in our area, but across the state. You'll see December where the winter break is. Coming back in January, we have parent-teacher conferences that is at the mid-tri. That works well, especially for our secondary, so there's plenty of time afterwards. If we have parent-teacher conferences, there's some time to meet with students, meet with parents, and talk to them about how to get in line so that they can have a productive end of the rest of the trimester. And
You're not planning on these being virtual or online,
oh,
Yeah.
you're asking me to look ahead. We would love to be meeting in person. I mean, that is our goal, is to be, we know that it's so much better if we can talk to people in person. Yeah. So we're very hopeful that we'll be able to turn the tide here. And then you'll note there the record day in March, and then a spring break, which aligns with ISU. We try to do that. And then we do in school on June 1st would be the last day, so it goes after the Memorial Day. And there's 2 days of school, which the secondary assured us would be plenty for finals, followed by graduation would be on a Thursday, and then that Friday would be a checkout day on June 3rd. All right, and so this will be presented next week for your approval. So, any questions?
You know, wasn't there I remember an instance where we had the week of Thanksgiving off before, and then didn't we have to change that or something? Because I remember parents being really mad because they had scheduled trips you know, or things, and then,
We had
Yeah, we
to
had-
shorten it.
yeah, we had
Oh.
to change that or something.
That, I believe that was the time when there was the eclipse. And remember, it created, it was much more, we switched the beginning of school, which meant we had to switch some days within the calendar. And so, that's when we had gotten some
That's when
feedback.
that happened.
Uh-huh.
It was actually, we had negotiations. You had set the calendar. We had negotiations and added days onto the year.
Oh, that's right, too.
And so we had to
Mhm.
add days onto the year that year.
Okay,
That's when it happened.
because I remember hearing from a bunch of parents who had trips to Hawaii and their kids now were.
That's true. Thank you, Mrs. Pettit. Yeah. We changed it 2 times. That one year when there was the eclipse, I think we changed it 2 times that year, and then we did have negotiations. So we're back at our 172 student contact days, which is what we've had for a while. So, great. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, Dr. Howell?
Yes.
Your turn.
Another calendar.
Another calendar.
So this is the board calendar, and as you can see, this would pick us up in January of '21. And so it pretty much aligns with the same schedule that we have had for quite a number of years. This does not show our school visits, of course, to start the year, nor did we carry them through to begin the year next year. So we'll just play that one by ear a little bit, but likely when we're able to reschedule those, they will be back into the, that first Tuesday of each month. And so you can see, again, the format has remained the same, the work session on the second Tuesday, regular board meeting on the third Tuesday, every other Wednesday. We have potentially, the potential for student hearings. And then you'll notice ISBA Day on the Hill. We'll see what that's going to look like for February. I don't know. And then likewise, November, we would just have our convention. This year, Boise, I think we were supposed to go to Sun Valley this last year when it got canceled. So we're back to Boise in that every other year format. And then you can see the various breaks that align with with our current schedule and for '21. And yeah, so just the typical meetings on the days that we've had them historically. So you'll be asked to approve this calendar next week as well.
So
Okay.
Day on the Hill, as far as you know, I mean, that's probably not gonna happen.
I would doubt it.
I mean,
Yeah, based on where we are
the
today.
prediction for COVID is still
Yeah,
out there.
what's the numbers that it would entail, I doubt they would do that.
Yeah,
Like we'll know next month, and if we get word, if we can just, bring an amendment.
yeah. So I'm sure we'll hear something, if not before the holiday break, directly after, because they'll have to plan at least a month in advance. We don't even have rooms or anything booked anyway, so yeah, I doubt that it's going to happen.
Tanya Wilkes.
How are
You're gonna talk about policy, boring stuff.
Yeah,
Make it fun.
get straight to the point.
Make it fun.
In light of all the different avenues we're taking on letting and allowing donations and partnerships, especially with our athletic facilities, Dr. Howe had talked to me about presenting a little bit more in-depth policy and procedure on how to accept those, so we don't go out of control and we have a little bit of guidance. And so if you look at the policy in itself, basically a little bit more in depth than what we had before, looking for, definitely community support and partnerships, but we want to make sure that it's, operative in the time of donation and meets an educational purpose for the district. So in the procedure part, if you notice, if it's 1,000 or less, then it's just accepted by the principal or director. If it's between 1,000 and 10,000, the superintendent or designee can approve that. But if it's above 10,000, similar to what we've been experiencing with the press box at Highland High School, the reader boards at Pocatello High School and so forth, then we definitely want to go through a little bit of a process. And if you look at the second page of that, have a little committee, and it could be, if it's athletics, the athletic directors could be that committee that go through and make sure that we're looking at everything with the cost, the installation, making sure that it's, equitable and things like that. So just more of a procedure process as we navigate through this new millennium of having partnerships.
Okay, I had an issue or
Okay.
two when I read through this.
Okay?
And,
Can I speak a little louder?
yeah, when I was reading through this, right at the top of your following basic principles shall apply to all gifts accepted by the district, and it said, gifts, the second bullet is, gifts to individual members of the staff by students, parents, or organizations are unacceptable. Now, in elementary school, kids always bring their teachers gifts. I mean, they do.
So we have to be careful about,
I remember one year, a child brought me a sweater or something, and I went, the size didn't fit, and I went to exchange it, and it was like $50, and it just about flipped, and I went and told them I couldn't keep it, And these people were Oriental or something. They said, well, that's
part of their
what we do in
culture.
our culture, and it was offensive to them. They said if you, but, and so there are instances like, and this truly takes all that away, doesn't it? Because you're not limiting.
I could see both ends of that. So I've been a teacher, I've been given gifts before, and I could see, I don't want it to be out of control where it's,
Right.
so maybe let me look at that a little bit.
That was a real exception,
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking that happens all the time. Or
Yeah.
Parents, lots of times they will gift things to your classroom, or they will bring something in.
And we got to be careful with that. Part of that too is kind of like with the Alexas. We can't have something in there that could be, that's where the school or the principal could sign off on that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if,
I just think you need to do something with that particular bullet to tweak it somehow, because you're gonna have, it just doesn't fit
Right.
right now with what occurs and happens on holidays.
my thought process of going into this,
Holidays
yeah.
and end of the year things,
Mr. Reed, by, say, ASBO standards or another entity, are you aware, is there a, say, a $20 limit on any gifts? Anything that you're aware of that you could reference or?
Typically, from what I understand, if individuals receive gifts, as long as it's under $50, it's not considered taxable. Anything above that is my understanding, that then you get into a thing where you have to monitor, record, and report those types of contributions.
So put a monetary number on there?
Yeah, I think we should.
And then
Unacceptable under or above $50 type limitation?
Okay, and then what about gifts for your classroom? Like, say, they donate something for every child for your classroom or something.
I definitely want the principal to sign off on that then. So if it's under 1,000, the principal can sign off. I don't want it to be just something they open their door to, because we don't know.
Yeah, I've seen families that
Could be calculators.
wanted to just help pay for maybe this field trip expense, or, or for this classroom, or they wanted to pay for, they were having memory books made, or, those types of things.
See, I think that would fit under, let me count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 8th bullet with gifts the value of 1,000 or less would be accepted by authority of the appropriate principal or designee, so that we understand what's happening. And I've talked to, we'll actually create a Google form so that they can go through the process of, hey, make sure it covers, especially, we're following these guidelines of how it fits in our school. Make sure it covers these things before it gets presented.
Okay.
Not when we get here and we discover them. We want to make sure that they're thinking through the process and being able to answer them before.
That would work there. And then I think, like you said, on bullet 2, if you limited it to $50.
Less than $50 is acceptable.
That would probably work. But
Okay.
I don't want to get teachers or people in trouble.
We all like a little bit of gifts. I get it. Any other things that stood out to you, Jackie, or any of the other board members?
No.
It's definitely a work in progress. This is, you know,
Well, and you'll put it on for comment, right? It
Mhm.
goes to comment from the staff and
mhm,
everything, so I'm sure if they see something,
yeah.
they'll comment.
Give me feedback, yep. Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's the district attendance area.
Yeah, yeah, they are.
Tanya and I are both gonna.
Okay.
Well, it's 8106, okay.
Oh, the athletic.
Yeah. Okay, so,
Sorry.
our attendance and transfer
Boundaries.
boundaries policy. The policy itself is okay, the procedure needed to be cleaned up a bit. We had, can I take this off?
We've had,
We had, the grandfathering rules still in place, and this last year was the last
For
year we did
siblings?
that, so that needed to come out. And then, what we'd like to propose is that, the high school athletic participation guidelines match up with IHSAA instead of, doing our own thing that we've done for the last little bit. So the change in that procedure would be to, remove that grandfathering clause because it no longer is pertinent. And then that all transfer requests, including open enrollment transfers requests, are subject to the IHSAA athletic eligibility rule instead of our
Our own.
SIT
and I
365 and
couldn't
all that
find
stuff.
another district that had above and beyond like ours. And I know we did that on purpose when we, you know,
When we did the
adopted
boundaries,
the
yep,
boundaries and when we had open enrollment and things like that throughout the district, so. Sue
There
and
was
I
a time for
talked-
it, but I think we're past that time.
Yeah.
So that's the,
Solve a lot of problems.
so that's the changes that we're making, and it really doesn't, need any approval one way or the other, but officially. But we all know, yes, it needed your approval. But officially, because it's procedure, not policy, it doesn't need to be, voted on. But if you have any questions or if you have any comments, we would love to.
Anything?
My question kind of, I think it's there, maybe it's in the next one.
They want you to speak in.
Use that microphone.
I'm mumbling because I'm trying to figure out where I
Mhm.
saw it. It may be in the next piece, but when a child gets moved because there wasn't room in the school that they were supposed to be going, their boundary school, there's a line in there that says kids that are transferred have to provide their own transportation. But do they have to under that circumstance?
No.
No. If it's us saying the
No.
school is full and you're being overloaded to another school, we provide the transportation.
Mhm.
If it's a parent's choice to say, my child would rather go to,
Mhm.
then they have to provide that.
That I understand, but
And
I-
it's
it
allowed.
just
But if
wasn't-
we overload them, no, we do the transportation.
Mhm.
Okay.
Anything else?
Okay,
All right,
thank you.
I'll be back in a few.
Thank you.
Okay, and now, well, lunch. Bart and Carl. And Dr. Howell, you're gonna participate?
So we'll improvise.
Yeah, we will. All right, Chairman Madsen, members of the board, and Superintendent Howe, we appreciate a few minutes of your time to talk about a matter of importance to our district that really is kind of the lifeblood of our district, a little bit, so to speak. Maybe to begin this conversation, we can talk historically where we've been in School District 25 for those who may be listening in, and just as a refresher. Supplemental levies are something that is authorized by Idaho Code for school districts to be able to participate in. And School District 25 has had an active supplemental levy for over 60 years in our community, and we're very appreciative of our patrons and of our community and the support for education that they have done. by matter of historical perspective, right now, as of 2018, over 80% of school districts in the state of Idaho have a supplemental levy. I think the last number was about 95 out of 115 districts. That paints a picture, if you will, and the picture that it paints is that funding for state or for public education that comes from the state of Idaho is deficient or does not meet all of the local needs to run all the programs and all the things that we have in local school districts. Therefore, they have gone out with supplemental funding to be able to cover some of the costs of their programs, and we are in no different of a situation. As of 2018, there was over $200 million in supplemental levies across the state, and our portion of that was $9.25 million, just so that you have an idea about that. I think that one of the things that we have always tried to do is to be sensitive to our local taxpayers. I think that we've been very frugal with the monies that we've asked for from our community. Knowing though, however, that it does require local support to continue the programs that we have had. And we've been responsible with those funds. Our $9.25 million supplemental levy has varied over the last 6 years between 12 to 14% of our general fund budget overall. And right now it's sitting at about 12%. So it's a significant portion of our budget. If you can imagine having to make up 12% of that funding if we did not have that money, it would be devastating to a district our size in relation to staffing and overall programs that we would be able to offer for public education in our district. One of the things that we have discussed as an administration in cabinet is just the uncertainty of where we're going to be for this next coming fiscal year. For example, this year we knew going into this year that we would have a 5% governor's holdback in the state of Idaho. We're still under that present 5% holdback. That has not been restored to local school districts nor to our district here. The other uncertainty comes from the standpoint that we did not know where we would be with student enrollment this year because of the COVID pandemic. And I would say surprisingly, I think to us a little bit, we find ourselves about 5% less student enrollment this year than the previous year. Now that is kind of holding true to some state trends and some national trends across the nation. We are protected at 3%. And so even though we may be at 5% right now, we will receive funding for up to 3%, but we are still estimating that we are going to lose in this year's budget $1.5 million because of student enrollment. Now, it's anyone's guess what will happen next year, if those students will just magically reappear back in our district or what will happen. But we do know that we are facing about a $1.5 million revenue shortfall because of student enrollment this year. And so that kind of plays a little bit into our decision as we think about a supplemental levy for the next 2 years. Another uncertainty right now is our medical insurance, and Carl might be able to talk a little bit more specifically about this, but we know that due to COVID, due to the increase in claims for COVID testing or for emergencies or serious effects from the coronavirus and those sorts of things, that we could potentially be facing increases in the double digits for medical insurance. That comes at a huge price tag to the school district. So with all those things kind of being said, one of the things that we have talked about is that, could we possibly, we didn't really feel that going into this next year that looking for an increase would be something that would be very favorable in anyone's eyes. We actually considered the possibility of could we decrease the supplemental levy, but due to the fact that we've lost $1.5 million, we still have that 5% holdback that has not been restored. after much discussion, we came to the conclusion that our recommendation would be that we stay with the $9.25 million supplemental levy for another 2 years. Now, that would put us 8 years in the running for that same dollar levy amount. And if you could open your information to the little chart that's provided you there, maybe just quickly, we can go over that, and then I'll turn some time over to Carl to talk about the timeline. So under that spreadsheet that you see there, we have 5 years listed. And the intent behind this spreadsheet or this chart is just to show that over the last 5 years, that the school district's proportionate share for the supplemental levy has actually been decreasing. In other words, that rate is less today than it was 5 years ago, and that's because the market value has increased so much. So a levy for $9.25 million in 2017, which may have cost you $21 a month roughly, now only costs $16 a month under today's market value. That's a good thing to say to our community, that actually costs you less to support the same dollar levy amount. If we go with, the board goes with the $9.25 million. But we can show and demonstrate that our proportionate share has been decreasing over the last 5 years. The other thing on top of that is that we did pay off our bonds that we had for the construction of Century High School and renovations to Pocatello High Schools in 2016. So that $2.5 million that we were getting for the bonds has also disappeared 5 or 6 years ago. So that's another very positive indicator. So that's where we are at in relation to the supplemental levy information right now. And unless you have specific questions, maybe we'll talk about the timeline and then some other information that we can share. And then if you have questions, we'd be happy to entertain those. So Carl, if you want to.
I just want to mention too that we always certify a levy amount with the county rather than a levy rate.
Mm-hmm.
So whether property taxes go up or down, we're still only going to receive $9.25 million rather than if taxes or property taxes or property values increase dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
We don't gain anything from that raise in property values other than the levy rate decreases. So I just want to make sure that we clarify that. Idaho code offers really 2 times during the year to have elections. One being in May, which is the primary election timeline, and November, which is really the general election. School districts have 2 other opportunities. One's in March and one in August. When we look at our budget timeline, you know, we talk about we need to have a budget pretty much prepared by the end of June. With that being said, we have traditionally gone out earlier in the year during our budget cycle so we could have an opportunity to know where our revenues are going to be when we get to our final budget, especially when we do negotiations and those other things that we do in the spring. So with that being said, the time set for the election in March is always the second Tuesday in March, so March 9th. And if you work backwards from that March 9th time period, there are certain deadlines we have to meet. And one of those is a resolution has to be sent to the county for the wording for that ballot early in January. Because that typically is before the time that we meet as a board, or you as meet as a board, and we have that discussion in January, we have determined that to create a January resolution is probably out of the question, so we come in December. So next week, we are going to ask the board to approve a resolution that we will send to the county in time to meet the deadline in the middle of January. That's basically the thing that we are responsible for as a district. We know the election is on March 9th. We submit the election data the resolution wording to the county in January, and then we wait. There are some other things in that election timeline that you can see that the county takes care of, all the publications, taking care of absentee voting, and that sort of thing. And then about 10 days after the election, I think it's 10 days, March 19th, the county commissioners will certify the election and let us know of the results. We will basically know the night of the election what the results are, but they certify it and let us know and give us the official document that we have to turn into the state tax commission. So with that being said, that is our timeline. So next week, we will be asking you as a board to approve a resolution. Right now, we are talking about $9.25 million as the number of dollars we're gonna put in that resolution. So,
Okay, also in your packet is a, understanding your school district supplemental levy, kind of a facts and information sheet. This was put together by Mrs. Fisher. It has a lot of the same information that we've talked with you about today. It just clarifies the voting time and date, the fact that this is a 50% plus one levy, where it would need to be passed by. It has some other information there that is useful in, as far as how the money is spent, what this money is used for throughout the district, et cetera. One of the challenges that we will have in being transparent, not that we have a challenge in being transparent, but one of the difficulties with the masks and the lack of meetings and not being able to meet in large groups is typically we have gone out to local groups, Rotaries, Kiwanis, Chamber of Commerce, anyone who is willing to listen and to receive a presentation to be better educated about the supplemental levy. That will be far more challenging in the coming months with the restrictions that we have. So we're going to have to look at different ways and means and where we can communicate this out to the public via social media, televised meetings such as this here, trying to get the information out, and any way that we possibly can. I'm not sure that we've refined all those ways at this point in time, but we are thinking about how we can best get this information out to the public so that they are informed and can make a good choice when they go to the polls and based upon the information that they have. So with that, I think unless Dr. Howell, unless you have anything else you'd like to add, we'd be certainly open to discussion or questions or anything you'd like to address.
I have a question on your levy impact thing about the percentage of decrease.
Mm-hmm.
For 2021, you have it's a 6.3% decrease. Is that from last year?
Yeah, yes, and that was after a 17% decrease from the year before. So that's not a total cumulative, that's just from year to year how much more it decreased.
Okay.
The intent was just to show that the levy rate has been going down, and we've been trying to be responsible to the citizenship in regard to not being an additional burden tax-wise, but trying to do what we feel is best and right for education and for the community.
the county sends us a levy sheet after they've been determined. Typically, it's in November. And so the actual levy, which appears on everybody's tax notices in December and June, was being displayed here. So they are the actual tax levy rates for that particular levy.
I saw that. So, and that's, yeah, I just wondered if that was cumulative or just,
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
which is pretty good. I mean,
Yeah,
Really is.
it is, it's amazing.
Wish everything else was that.
Any other questions for the gentleman? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so on the levy now we have, okay. Sue, is Lisa gonna be here? Okay.
Not that I know of.
Okay,
So, we started all of this back in September. And at that time, we had asked people for recommendations for a new mascot for Pocatello High School. And then we had a committee go through and evaluate them, all those choices, by several questions. And that was from our very first survey that whether, hang on here, because I have the questions. Does it promote pride and school spirit by uplifting and promoting positivity for everyone associated by the school? Does it work equally well with boys and girls athletics? Be distinct among our Idaho high school schools? Does it continue to honor our school's heritage and history in a distinguished manner? Does it emulate positive characteristics that can be reflected in our student staff and generate excitement through the sounds and actions which could be used for the event? So that committee went through all of those and came up with the top 6 or 7. And then we sent out an evaluation to students, alumni, and community members at that time. And we had 3,514 people evaluated at that time. And the top choice at that time was Pocatello Bison. And then you asked if we would, and we brought it back and said, it had a couple on there that were schools in the area, like Wolves, that was part of New Horizons. And so, and you had asked if we would send that information back out and give other people another opportunity to evaluate those mascots. And we had another 1,163 people evaluate the mascots. And at this time, and you have in your packet, if I can get to it, and I don't know that I can. Maybe. It's going to be Henri. I'll just keep talking while she brings it up. At this time, the evaluation for that came out at 28.6% for the Phantoms, 26% for Pocatello Bison with a bison mascot, and 21.6% of Thunder with a bison mascot, and then the other ones were smaller after that. If you look at the criteria, did they meet the criteria? Even though Phantoms came out at the top a little bit ahead, it consistently did not meet any of the criteria that was set aside for that committee. So it's your decision, and you can look at that data and see what you think. If you look at bison as a whole, whether it was bison or thunder bison, 47.6% of the people who evaluated it chose bison as a mascot.
Whether you named it Thunder.
Whether they named it thunder or bison, it was overwhelming that bison was the choice as far as the mascot goes. So
How many just voted for Thunder? I mean, I'm
for thunder all by itself,
looking if you combine the Thunder with bison and Thunder by itself.
okay, hang on a minute, because I have to subtract stuff because it didn't print that number. About 6.5%
On Thunder.
on thunder by itself, thunder. So if you added those two together, you have 28.1.
28.
So I'm just presenting the information to you, and then next week, we'll hopefully make a decision on moving forward on this. Do you have any questions, or
I do want to say I have gotten some emails from parents who were concerned about the Phantom. One, because of the negative connotations, and worried that they would be hearing a lot of booing.
Well, and
I mean, just
we've talked about how do you glorify phantoms? How is that a positive influence? And when the committee evaluated these. Phantoms didn't meet any of the criteria, but there was a significant amount of votes, so they felt like they had to move it forward, but it was not their choice to move it forward. It didn't meet any of the criteria that we had set aside.
You could be called spooks, and I don't know that I like that at all.
Mhm.
So,
Or dress up in a sheet and look like the KKK.
right.
So,
Well, you know, I thought, when they had the ghost
mhm,
show
mhm.
here and do that. And I was telling my daughter today, I bought me one of those shirts that says, "We've got spirit." And I said, maybe I should wear my shirt today.
Mhm.
I thought, no, it probably wouldn't be real appropriate to do that, but I can see where the kids love that.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I know this is totally the kids, and because that school does have a history of
Mhm.
that, has always, you know, it was my school, it has that history, and it's a fun kind of history for them, and a fascinating thing. But whether it's mascot worthy is
Another
the
question.
whole, is the
Mhm.
whole idea, and my feeling is they can still have fun with that, you
Mhm.
know, I mean.
Oh, absolutely.
I watched the thing where they're selling T-shirts, the kids are, you know, about it, and they're all hyped up about that, and it's a fun, unique, different thing there. But the real appropriateness of it as your mascot is the real question to me, and I had to agree with the committee, you know, that I think they felt obligated to bring it because so many of the kids really like it, and some adults probably too, but there are some real questions and worries with.
It would be hard for me to say that it can be uplifting and promoting positivity, or that it continues to honor or emulates positive characteristics. That's, for me, is very difficult to support.
And
But-
while I can commend those who put their time and effort, you know, in
Mhm.
proposing that and understanding where they came from, as a board member, I'm still not sure that that's.
Well, and like I said, it's 28%, but if you look at Bison put together, it's almost 48%.
Right. And.
We're
and
wanting
Thunder-
that, some form of that.
Thunder put together, whether you have a bison.
Mhm.
I mean, so I think that if you combined,
Mhm.
like your Pocatello Thunder and and the bison, you have the real majority
Mhm.
there. I mean,
Mhm. Yes.
that's
Yep.
how I look at the
Yep.
pie anyway.
Yep.
here, you
Yep.
know.
So, any
So
other,
That's just where.
and like I said, that's a discussion you guys need to have, and
One of the other things that did occur to me as I was thinking about this too is the part of what we're trying to do, I mean, I think where everybody is somebody is an important statement about Pokie High.
absolutely.
That doesn't quite fit with Phantoms.
Mhm.
But there was a program that I saw, and it was actually about Native Americans, but talking about the value of the bison to them. And part of what they talked about was this whole thing of herd, of working together and that sort of thing. And that to me is,
Mhm.
that's what I've heard coming out of Pokie High. So those are pieces, I don't see the unity piece in the Phantoms
Mhm.
that I do in the possibility of the bison, so.
Well, and I know Dave once mentioned in his mind's eye, the vision of a thundering herd.
Mhm.
You know,
Uh-huh.
I mean,
Mhm.
that was
Mm-hmm. Pretty cool.
powerful and majestic, you know, or things, and so I don't know, and I, as I recall, the group that brought this to us, you know, they sounded like they thought some of these ideas could be combined a
Mhm.
little too,
Mhm.
you know, so.
So that's the information I have. Like I said, you guys get to chew on it for a little while, and it'll be on next week's agenda, and we can
Mhm.
go from there. But do you have any other questions that I can try and answer for you?
Is there any way we can please all the people?
No.
So half the people
Sorry.
please and half of the people.
What did you say?
Is there any way we can please everyone?
Oh.
If you figure it out, you let me know. We'll get together, we'll sell it.
There you go.
We'll go with millions there, but yeah, no, there's,
Yeah.
so,
Okay, see no more
'Kay.
questions, but thank you.
all right, thank you.
And thanks for the
Mhm.
survey and the information. I do think people had fun voting on this, I've heard,
They had what?
had fun
Mm-hmm.
participating in this.
Yep. And I will tell you, because I just looked to see how many. So out of that first bunch that we did, that 3,514, 2/3 of them were adults. They weren't students.
Oh, really?
They were alumni and community members. And then from this last one, this 1,163 people, 32% of them were adults. I think that's my number. I wrote a number here and I can't figure out why I wrote it. But it was more than that. I would say 32% of it was kids. The rest of it was adults. So again, 2/3 were adults.
Oh,
So,
So do we know where the kids came out on this?
we asked them point blank whether they were Pokey high school students or if they were, if they're current Pokey students, a parent of a Pokey student, an alumni, a community member with no affiliation, current or incoming Pokey student, a community member with no affiliation to Pocatello High School or not a community member at all. So, and I will tell you that if you take out the not a community member at all, the Phantoms and the Bison came within 9 votes of each other.
oh, so a lot of non-community
Had voted for Phantoms.
vote.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, now it's time for public comment on the agenda, and I haven't received any requests, and I don't see any public, so we'll move on. It's time for us to recess the work session and convene a special meeting to consider taking action to approve the BLT and department chairs stipends. And that would be,
I don't know if Mr. Orr made it up. He may be watching from down below in his office, just waiting to come in, but I can cover that, Mr. Chairman. And
okay?
just in your packet there is a memorandum from Chuck, and it is just asking to pay the leadership positions for December and in June. And you can see that would be paid from TQ funds. And then also, there are 4 there, and then 1 department